My name is Anna. Today, me and my colleagues would like to tell you about our way of making the user experience smooth at Klarna and how we achieve that with collaboration. Let me introduce myself and my team briefly. So I'm Anna and I'm a product manager at Klarna. And I'm here today with a couple of members from my team. It's our amazing designer, Anna, and our brilliant engineer, Artem. We are all located in Berlin and work on consumer banking products at Klarna. I don't know how much you know about our company, about our products, so I would like to tell you a little bit about what Klarna actually is and what kind of products we build and why we want to make the user experience smooth. And actually why we even use this word smooth. Maybe Snoop Dogg can help to answer that. Let's find out in the video. So as you saw in the video, smooth is not an empty word for us. It's kind of a part of Klarna DNA, and we really care about making everything smooth for our users, seamless and with their best user experience. One of the unique aspects of Klarna that it provides smooth experience for both sides of e-commerce, to buyers and sellers. Klarna helps customers during their purchase journey and beyond that. It also takes care of their finances. And on the merchant side, Klarna provides payment solutions and takes the fraud and credit risks. On the next slide, I will give you a glimpse of the products we offer to our consumers. It's not going to be an exhaustive list because we have quite a big amount of products at Klarna, but just a small preview so you'll have an idea what kind of products we're working on. So first of all, we have a Klarna app where our consumers can take care of all their shopping and financial needs. And by shopping, we mean that consumers, they don't even need to leave the Klarna app to do their shopping. They can do that using their shopping browser that is already inside the app. They can just visit their favorite shops and buy what they need. We also offer a Klarna card. It's a card that can be issued in a physical or in a virtual format, and consumers can use this card to pay in-store or online and pay later for their purchases. And last but not least, Klarna Banking. This is a product that our team is working on, so it's kind of our baby. Klarna Bank account is a current account with all the necessary functionality that allows consumers to get their salary, pay their bills, and use a debit card to pay in a store. Klarna today is about 90 million consumers, 250,000 merchants that use Klarna as their payment solution, and we have 2 million transactions daily. We are also quite big in a geographical sense, so we operate in many countries all over the world. On this map you see our core markets that are located on the 3 continents. Our headquarters is in Stockholm, but we also have a huge office in Berlin, where our team is located. So with all this scale, it's very easy to become a slow and complex and bureaucratic company with plenty of bottlenecks, hierarchies, and decision fatigue. For some reason, we are not that kind of company. And I would like to tell you a bit more about the ways we work that helped us to stay agile, motivated, and high performing. So we have about 188 product teams that are grouped in 15 domains. And all the teams are cross-functional and comprise of the expertise around business, user experience, and technology. Other competences can be involved as well during their product development cycle, for example, marketing, legal, or analytics. So we say that this team setup helps Klarna to operate as a collection of startups aligned on their vision and mission. Everything we do revolves around enabling the startups to be as autonomous but aligned as possible, to truly have fresh and innovative style of startup, but at the same time, strength of an enterprise. To work this way, the following principles are helping us immensely: autonomy, empowerment, ownership, and transparency. I will elaborate about each of them in the following slides. So, autonomy. What autonomy means to us? As I mentioned before, we want to enable teams to work in an autonomous way. We call the area that teams work within a problem space. So a problem space is an enduring and well-scoped part of a user journey, internal or external. The problem space defines a scope, but it doesn't define how to solve problems in that scope or what great looks like. That is up to the teams to figure out. So the solutions that we have within the problem space, they can change, but the power of focusing on a problem space that stays and it's there with the team. To define how to be successful in their problem space, teams decide on their vision and mission. They define the metrics they want to measure to understand how they contribute to the success of the product they build. And our teams are quite small, 4 to 8 people, but we say they are fully equipped to own problem space end to end. We have full stack engineers who can contribute both to front end and back end, and in the majority of cases the teams have their dedicated designer. As we observed, it hugely contributes to the quality of the product. Also, the teams are quite stable, as we believe it is worth to grow experience and knowledge about their problem space within a team. To work autonomously, we need to empower the teams and create a sense of ownership. We do that by sharing the knowledge about the product with everyone in the team. The product manager is not a bottleneck or knows it all. Every team member should have all the knowledge to make their product choices. Our engineers, they don't only code, they participate in the discussions on the early stage designs, they observe the user interviews, and of course we give them all the possible space and opportunity to share their product knowledge, because they really do have it. And a product manager is not a boss. PM enables the team to deliver great things. PM's role is more of a servant leader that is accountable for their day-to-day delivery, to remove any blockers, and to ensure that everyone is working in a efficient way and that everyone is happy. Every initiative or an epic has their own tech lead, and any engineer from the team can be a tech lead. The tech lead has all the knowledge to drive the initiative forward. They remove their dependencies, resolve their blockers, and create documentation so that it's shared with all other team members. Product manager has now more time to dedicate to product discovery, and engineers have more sense of ownership over the work they do. In this very decentralized approach that I described, where everyone is taking an active role in driving product forward, transparency is very important. And transparency helps to be aligned inside the team, but also inside the company. From my experience, it is quite common that a product manager is doing product discovery work under the radar and then just comes to their engineers, to the team with a decided set of features to work on. We try to avoid that. We include discovery in the sprint, also because oftentimes it requires significant engineering input, and we need to plan this work. And also it creates lots of transparency over the roadmap for the team. Another use case of transparency is transparency over their product and technical knowledge. In order to keep track of our discovery work and also ongoing work that is quite decentralized and led by the tech leads, we try to keep documentation in a centralized space. We're trying to be very organized about it so that all the findings and all the progress we have can be found by all the team members at any time. And of course, transparency for the stakeholders is hugely important. Before, I've mentioned that every team operates in a very autonomous way and they have their own vision and mission and their KPIs. And it might seem that if every team pulls in their own direction, then it can be a mess. So to avoid that, we have lots of touch points with our stakeholders. One of them we call it a team review. It's a bi-weekly, usually 1 hour meeting in a roundtable format, where we invite all the stakeholders that are relevant for their projects, initiatives that the team is working on, the stakeholders who should be informed or asked for feedback. And this roundtable discussion helps to remove all the blockers, resolve open questions, and just to ensure that the team is going into the right direction. That was a high-level overview of the principles we use overall in our teams. And now I'm passing the mic to Anna, our designer, who will talk about how it is actually working out for her as a designer in the team.
Thank you, Anya. And hi, everyone. My name is Anna Gerasimenko, and I'm a product designer at Klarna. Today, we're going to talk about the different levels of communication designer has at Klarna, the challenges that we face on each of these levels, and also how you can deal with them. Let's go. So I, as a designer, can start my morning from the daily stand-up with my cross-functional team, and then later have a design domain meeting, followed with a global design team follow-up. After that, I can have at the end of the day the newsletter from the whole organization. This is about the context switching, and that could be tough, so designer need to know everything and could be a bit overloaded with this information. Let's look into each of these levels and see what we can do with it. So the first one is a designer as a part of a cross-functional team. We at Klarna work at this distributed cross-functional teams and have at each of these teams designer, product owner, and technical specialists. So we as a team are owning the product aspect. In our case, it's onboarding and activation. So my team is in charge of everything related to the sign up, to the onboarding, and later on when user is registered, we make sure that users start using the product actively. So I, as a designer, try to involve my team on every step of the design process. They are not, the process is not isolated and team is involved, so I get the technical and business input early enough and can act on it. That helps to make my process visible and also avoid errors on the later stages. What are the benefits of it? Definitely, it's a deep understanding of all technical and business aspects of the product. However, from the other side, there are some downsides of it and challenges that we have, which are that you need to get the team input early enough and later regularly. Besides of that, you should not overload the team with all the small details, but still you need to keep your design process visible for them. One of the tools that we use in order to face this challenge is a brainstorming session. So we try to run these sessions at the beginning of the project, which is the kickoff, where we get the input of the whole team early enough. That helps to utilize the unique skill set of each team member and come up with a wide range of ideas. So we use Miro for that, as we are currently in a remote setup, and this session looked like something similar to the Google Design Sprint. But it's a bit more condensed. We run it during for 3-4 hours, but not for a whole week. So some exercises that we do there are empathy mapping, how might we exercise, reverse brainstorming, crazy 8, and we end it all with solution sketches. So when it's done, we try to summarize everything and prioritize the most promising ideas. At the end, we get the action plan and put some of these ideas for future refinement into our backlog. Some useful resources that I can recommend are the Hyper Island Toolbox, Google Design Sprint Toolkit, and the Atlassian Team Playbook. There you can find some interesting exercises and tools which you can use to run the similar workshops and get the ideas of a whole team at the very beginning. This approach also helps to spread the design culture all across the organization and enable developers to think in a context of design and a user-centric approach without designer. The next level is the designer as a part of a domain design team. So each team has a designer. In our case, these are several teams which sometimes cooperate between each other, and designers need to closely work and know the context of the projects. So, for example, my team onboarding and activation created the sign up, and we thought about the methods, how we can make a user top up their account from the very beginning, because that would make the user stay with us. So another team called account and money movement already created the flow of adding money. So why not to reuse the created experience and not spend our time for that? So we collaborated together, mixed our flows and created something new, which was very efficient and helpful. And benefits are the fresh view on your designs from your colleagues who are not that deep in your problem space, as well as enriching the user experience by mixing different parts of the flow. So some challenges that we have here is staying in context of 7 other teams' projects. This could be tough. You need to know what are they working on and also what is the progress on each of the projects. Stitching different parts together could also become a challenge. So something that helps us here is a design crit session. This is a format where we bring into the table some projects early enough so all other designers can make their input and share their thoughts. We also run it at Miro. How that works, you individually prepare the background and context explanation, share it on the meeting, And each designer has time to individually reflect on what they just saw, and also after that have a round table where everyone can share the thoughts and give the feedback, so everyone's voice is heard. So after that, we spent around 20 minutes to wrap it up and have a takeaways for designer who shared the project. It helps to have an action plan and schedule some meetings with other designers to have one-on-one discussions on details. So the next level is a designer as a part of a global design team. All domains together form the organization, and designers from different domains, they also collaborate between each other. So as we all live under the same Klarna umbrella, we need to know what's going on in other projects because the work streams sometimes go parallelly. As an example, we have a product called Klarna card, and they also have a sign-up. This is the physical representation of our Klarna payment methods. Like you can go to the shop and buy something there with your Klarna card. After that, you can give money back to Klarna later. So to get the card, you need to give us some data, which also needed for the banking registration. Why not to reuse the information that we already have from user and make the banking sign up easier? That's what we did, and in this way we made the user experience a bit more smooth. And some benefits of it is the opportunity to reuse the experience of other teams. Also, we learn from each other a lot because different teams definitely have their strengths and weaknesses, so we can share information between each other. And the user experience consistency is something that we get at the end when we stitch together the different flows and reuse the knowledge. So challenges that we have here is staying in touch with a lot of other designers. Could be difficult because you need to also track the project progress and also keeping the user experience consistent. So users should not feel like different teams created the app. It should all feel like the one big holistic experience. And what we do here is a Notion documentation. This is our way to share the information about the projects and keep everyone informed. So we store here some information about our teams, the project information, how-tos, and assets library. So each designer also has their own space where you could store your project information. You could have the team materials or user research or competitor benchmarking information. And if we dive into one layer more, you will see that each project has the description where you can find the goal of the project, you can find the resources, you can find all different steps of the design process. So next time, if someone is interested in your project, you can just share the link to this document, and you should not assign the meeting and spend your time. So this makes the communication more efficient. And the last but not least, the layer of designer being a part of a whole company. Besides of designers and technical specialists, we also have marketing people, brand, UX writers, and so on and so far, and we need to cooperate with them as well. So, for example, recently we ran the big campaign with Rocky ASAP, who became our investor and the face of our app for a while. So it should all create the big story for user. From the moment users saw the advertisement on the street, and then the whole way through the social media, YouTube, and right to the product. So it should all represent the one big Klarna experience. So the benefit is that our centralized teams, they create some materials that could be used by other teams, and that creates the consistency of the user experience. However, it's a bit challenging to stay aware of all these changes and simultaneously implement them in the app. So what helps us in order to achieve this all is our design system, and my colleague Artem will share more about how we use it at Klarna.
Thank you, Anna. Hello everyone, my name is Artem and I'm a software engineer at Klarna. Today I'd like to present how the design system works in Klarna from an engineer's perspective. So during my first 2 years in Klarna, we didn't have a dedicated designer for our team. Instead, we had a designer for a domain that worked basically for several teams in parallel. That meant that sometimes we needed to wait for several weeks for some designs or feedbacks, and for some urgent features, we couldn't wait for so long. This could have gone terribly wrong because we actually needed to implement these things by our own, right? But the Bubble UI components library, the shareable components library, helped us greatly with that. So Bubble UI is a convenient UI components library with a good documentation, and it's integrated with the design system. Bubble UI documentation contains preview of the components in different states and types of the properties that the developers can pass to the components, as well as the view in the dark mode and switching between mobile and web component presentation. So why do we use the components library, right? Well, it saves the implementation time. There is no need to think so much about the styles, paddings, margins, icons, and so on. And most of the times, it does not require so much knowledge, so more engineers can start working with it effectively and also start faster. But unfortunately, Bubble UI is not always enough to implement the UI components. First of all, it takes too long for the library itself and its version in the Klarna app to update, and that leads to additional highly reusable components appearing in a separate UI folder in the code. And while this solves the implementation issues, unfortunately, it adds confusion due to having multiple reusable components solving the same task. Secondly, Bubble UI team is likely also too small to support so many teams and people in Klarna. And lastly, Bubble UI wasn't always consistent with the design system, and it led to some communication issues between engineers and the designers. For example, our old implementation with Sketch and Abstract was the following. Sketch had different namings from the Bubble UI, so it made it hard sometimes to discover the components for the engineers. And we could end up with something that was not implemented yet, for example, or some components could be deprecated, so they still would appear in Sketch, but they wouldn't appear in Bubble UI. And let me show you how it worked in practice. So first, I needed to expect a text element, find the properties, and then copy-paste this property and search in the Bubble UI documentation by myself, going there. And in this example, it works quite well for the title secondary. Here, however, we cannot see the direct one-to-one mapping. Basically, I need to search the elements by myself, assuming the element name. The Bubble UI documentation helps with this greatly, but it could still lead to some mistakes. Here you can see this in action. So the difference between what was planned in the design and what was possible to implement an engineer. On the left side, you can see that the components were designed as checkboxes, but in the end were implemented as the toggles. And this resulted in much time spent for the communication on how and why this exactly cannot be done. Because Sketch didn't have the specific nodes that this checkbox actually was not available in the Bubble UI library for the mobile applications. But let me show you how we're solving this now. So moving forward, our plan is to use Figma to solve the problems that mentioned previously. The components should be now linked to the specific tailbook page. As you can see, you can just click on the button, view documentation, right? The status of the components will be clearly displayed. So for example, can be deprecated, work in progress, or something else. Moving to the new integration with Figma, we will also have more aligned namings. So, for example, in this case, we have a button secondary, right, which helps me as an engineer to understand what is the exact component I should be working with. And let's look at this at the practice, shall we? So here, how it works in the integration with Figma. So I can just click on the button component in Figma, then I can find the view documentation button on the right. I can just click on it, it redirects me directly to the Bubble UI documentation, and there I can find the property that I need to pass to receive this specific component. So, what are the key takeaways from our presentation? Well, first of all, shared ownership in the team is a quality booster for the end result. Secondly, the design does not happen in the isolation, but instead in the collaboration with the team and other stakeholders. And lastly, integrating the engineering tools with the design system speeds up the implementation process. So I hope it was insightful for you and you can use the learnings in your team. Thanks for your attention.